Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, a new candidate has entered the race for 1st District Supervisor. Veteran and videographer Gordon Clatworthy will join us in a moment to talk politics, Humboldt County, and why he's felt the call to run. Also, Poly Humboldt's new enrollment numbers are way below expectations, though that hasn't stopped the university from offering a new slew of programs, including a brand new bachelor's degree in communications for Pelican Bay inmates. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. My wife Amy and I, along with hundreds of other Eureka parents, had quite the scare this week when Eureka High School went into lockdown due to reports of an armed man entering the Greenbelt at 15th and M Streets. Witnesses reported that the man had a rifle slung over his shoulder. Because we live in 21st century America, and because this stretch of land was reasonably close to Eureka High School, they put the campus into the high security stance known as lockdown. The fear we all felt was palpable and experienced as actual physical pain. My wife and I both rushed to the scene and sat on a nearby curb waiting for the situation to resolve itself. It took 3 hours. The man was eventually located, and his weapon was determined to be a BB gun that was designed to look just like an assault rifle. Thanks for that. This comes after a couple of recent cases somewhere in the county or elsewhere in the county where the students brought actual guns to school. The man with the BB gun in this case was found, questioned, and ultimately released as there had been no threats made. I'd like to commend the authorities in this instance, from EPD, Fortuna Police Department, and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, for doing all they could to help resolve this situation and handling what could have been a living nightmare with care and diligence. It has reminded me that although we have been lucky thus far in Humboldt County to have avoided school shootings and other forms of mass violence, that lucky streak could end at any time. Love your kids. Respect their teachers, who may very well one day hold the life of your child in their hands. We shouldn't need our educators and police to have the kind of wartime courage that we all see so often portrayed in books and film, but we do, because that's the kind of world we live in. Thanks to everyone who came through this real-world shooter drill with flying colors. No matter what we might hope, such a performance may one day make all the difference in the world. And in the interest of putting that day off for as long as possible, please lock up your firearms, be a responsible gun owner, and if you see something, say something. Joining us now for the interview is videographer and Coast Guard veteran Gordon Clatworthy, who has declared himself a candidate in the race for 1st District Supervisor against the incumbent Rex Bone, who has also announced an intention to run. Thank you, Gordon, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. And man, that is scary. Lockdowns.
Yeah, lockdowns are scary, and they've happened. They happen with increasing regularity because of our security stance. And, all you know as a parent that the school's in lockdown, usually you get a frantic text from your kid, we can't move, we don't know what's going on. And they're asking you for information just as much as you're trying to get information from. It's just a thing. And of course, then you flash to all the scenes that we've seen on network news where people aren't as lucky as we were this week. And really, really bad things happen. So.
Yeah, it grips you, especially as a parent. You're just, you're lucky that the county has response to things like this, and that's why it's important to not politicize like the police, because they're there to protect everybody in the community. They're there to help people, and it's really important.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. My wife and I, who are we've been following the ongoing developments with, Black Lives Matter and all that, and there's a lot of political issues that go in that direction, but we were sitting there and watching these police officers, form at one point in a line and going across the football field looking for any evidence of this guy, and we were, remarking how courageous that was, and especially in comparison to things like happened in Uvalde, where the officers perhaps weren't as courageous. And we just felt a renewed appreciation for the people in that line of work. And, I think that it's proper to extend our, commendations to them when they do something good, as well as criticize when we feel like they're doing something wrong. But I think that's looking at an issue like that myopically. They're doing more than just
wrong. They're really working hard. And people that join, people that join the police force is that's what they want. They want to go out. They want to do good. You know, they are the good guys. And occasionally there might be some less than reputable people in there, but I think so far we've had a pretty good system in place for kind of getting rid of some of those less than reputable officers. And I'm really thankful that the police are there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you are trying to become first district supervisor.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's start with the first basic question. Why are you running? What inspired you to throw your hat in the fray?
Oh, so the thing that really put it into focus for me was after I had retired out of the Coast Guard, I was driving down to San Francisco. The military, the VA here has very limited resources. So you have to, I was getting treated for cancer. So I was driving down on one of the shuttles to San Francisco where I had to set up my treatment, and I was sitting next to a man who was also a veteran, who was also getting treated for cancer, and he happened to have been on the grand jury. And we ended up talking. It's a 6-hour drive down there, so we ended up talking the whole time about just, you know, how we felt about the county and how we felt about the people working, and he really clued me in on some of the things happening in the background that probably needed a little bit more oversight and probably needed to get cleared up. And really good friends with him. I've gone over to his house a few times and talked to other members of the grand jury over there, and just really felt like somebody needs to come in, and I think there's a little bit of backroom cleaning that needs to happen, and then I think we need to get a government in that's a little more functional for the needs of the community.
Yeah. This is the first I've heard about you surviving cancer. Do you mind if we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
So can you tell us what the cancer was and how being a cancer survivor has affected you?
Sure. Yeah, I had a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that was, it's not curable, but it's treatable. So I'm in remission right now. But yeah, it really showed me, what some of the frontline workers have to go through, some of the medical workers have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And there are people out there that need help that might not be able to get it as rapidly as I could.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem.
Might be a hard thing to talk about at times. So now you are a coastie. I mean, not to use a derogatory term, but that's what a lot of Coast Guard people like to be called.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, coastie. That'll work.
But so tell us about your military career and how you think that might prepare you for a term as supervisor.
Oh yeah, so military career, the Coast Guard's really, really different than any other kind of military branch. We're not Department of Defense. When I first joined, we were Department of Transportation, and that shifted into the Department of Homeland Security. And we're more of a police force than we are a military branch. But unlike other military branches, like the Army, you have to. There's like 300 different jobs that you can be in the Army. So if you wanted to be just a guy that fills the tanker in the gas, you can do that. But the Coast Guard has, I want to say, like less than 30 jobs. So you really have to cross-train. So I was a medic. I was a firefighter. I did boarding teams. I was a cook, and I managed finances. So all of those things, all those different hats really help, especially when it comes to government offices, because you have different ways to think of things that other people might not have the experience with. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, do you think? What does it say about the Coast Guard? First of all, that if you get elected, we will actually have two members and former members of the Coast Guard on the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, you're talking about Natalie Arroyo.
Natalie Arroyo.
Yeah,
you had her on the show and talked about her.
Oh yeah, wonderful person. Yeah, what it says is that we get stuff done, and when you when you get a coastie working for you, things get fixed. So we're the one branch of service that knows how to do more with less. There are 40,000 Coast Guard members, and that's less than the NYPD. And we have a huge swath of responsibilities. So yeah, we hit the ground running for sure.
Excellent, excellent. Now, before the show, we were talking about the issues that I had listed as questions to ask, and you've said that cannabis is one of your highest priorities. Can you talk a little bit about what you think of how the county so far has managed cannabis, and where you think there may need to be reform, or what you would like to see happen?
So I'm definitely a vote no on Measure A guy, 100% vote no on Measure A.
Well, let's talk about what Measure A is first of all.
Measure A is a way to reduce the amount of grows that we have, and it would actually reduce the transference of property from, like, let's say you have a father who wants to pass on his, his farm to his kid. His kid would have to apply for a whole new permit, so that would really cripple the industry that we have. And it's passed as a way of helping the environment. So I did some digging, and I found that probably 90% of all the grows in Humboldt County happen in the southern part of the county. And in District 1, we've got 13.1 million square feet of grows along the Mattole River. And so, one of the main worries is runoff into the river and blue-green algae, cyanobacteria. So you would think that if it was going to actually protect the environment, that there would be a noticeable amount of cyanobacteria in the Mattole River, because that's where a majority of the grows occur. But there really isn't. In fact, when the Department of Health and Human Services put out a press release talking about the cyanobacteria in the rivers, one of the rivers that wasn't mentioned was the Mattole River. So that means that the regulations that we have right now for grows are doing their job, and they're protecting the environment. And we could probably even relax a few of them, like when it comes to generators. But yeah, we have to look at, because a lot of farmers are struggling. A lot of businesses are struggling. 1 in 5 people in Humboldt County are living at or below the poverty line, and these are people that are, choosing between gas or buying milk. And we have to do what we can for them, because they've done a lot for this county. And with cannabis, I mean, there's the initial, first generation effects of the people who are growing the marijuana, but then there's also all the ancillary impacts that come from all the community spending that goes on by people who are growing. So I think that's... we're shifting from, or at least on the federal level, they're talking about shifting from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, and that'll allow these businesses to get more tax write-offs, use their farm equipment for tax write-offs, and possibly even allow us to ship outside of state. And I don't know, anywhere in the world you say Humboldt County, and people know that that's a golden product, and that's something that people want. So we need to, if we can get that, and then maybe use the permits as a cooperative, so people can grow under a Humboldt County name and get it out there, then I think farmers would benefit from that name recognition. And it would come, local dollars would swell up for sure.
Absolutely. Now, real quick, I've been contacted by a regular Headline Humboldt viewer, Carol Connors. Hi, Carol. Thanks for watching.
Where are we?
But I wanted to say that, or she asked the question of, she's really interested in your campaign, and she was wondering about donating money to your effort. But we talked about before the show about why you're not yet accepting donations. If we can go over that again, why? What are you waiting for?
I am going to accept donations. It will happen, but yeah, before I accepted donations, I wanted to make sure I crossed my T's and dotted my I's. I'm not one of those less than reputable candidates that will just start accepting donations without having the proper paperwork filed.
Sure.
So yeah, I have to get my my organization in order before I can even start accepting donations, and that relies on the state. And the state is kind of slow right now because it's a big election year and there's a lot going on. So the Office of Elections said that it might take about a month, and I've only been doing this for a couple weeks. So
yeah.
You know, it will happen, and you will be able to donate. And thank you very much. Right now, I am accepting signatures in lieu. So I'll be at College of Redwoods tomorrow between around 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you want to come out and support us and you live in the 1st District, I would love to get your support. So I'll be there tomorrow.
Excellent.
The 15th, okay. September 15th, okay. 2023.
Excellent. Now, the Rex Bone, who is the incumbent, is trying to get his 4th term, which is it would be a long career in terms of the Board of Supervisors. Where do you see yourself contrasting with the Rex Bone, and where do you see similarities?
Yeah, I'm not going to do 4 terms. I don't think anybody should be doing 4 terms. I don't think. I think that the county is dynamic and is growing, and things have changed. And to try to keep things the same for 4 terms, a term is 4 years. Yeah. So he's been in for 12 years already. And another 4 years. I mean, yeah, there are some people out there that are saying they want things the way they are, and they don't want things to change, but things are already changing. Yeah. You know, legalization happened in that time. The housing crisis is going on, and we do need some different ideas out there on how to deal with things, and we can't just kick things down the road. We can't just say, we'll deal with it 4 more years down the road. We have to deal with things now, and we have to. We should have been dealing with things, 4 years ago or 8 years ago. But here we are, and we have to make a huge impact now.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned housing, and last week we talked a little bit about some of your ideas for housing, but let's get a little bit more in depth on that. I mean, the 2 issues of homelessness and affordable housing and the median income, like you talked about before, they're all deeply interrelated. How do you see, what path do you see in order to try and help people find homes, stay in homes, or to otherwise benefit a tight market?
Well, housing is the keystone to any good economy. People with housing use less medical, which medical takes over 50% of the county's budget. Sorry. So yeah, medical takes over 50% of the county's budget.
Yeah.
People that have housing use less medical services because they're not getting sick as often. Housing also, especially low income and rent controlled housing, gives people more of their paycheck, which they can in turn spend on local businesses, which help businesses grow. Housing is really the keystone. So the most important thing right now is to build housing, and specifically through the housing needs assessment. There's over 1,000 units that we need between very low income and low income, which includes people like disabled veterans who are only getting partial payments, who can't afford higher rents. It's housing. We need to build housing. We need to spend a good amount on housing. We need to work together with other agencies and work together to combine grants together so that we can really build some massive amounts of housing.
Yeah. Another issue that is sort of related to both of those and all 3 of those, is addiction in Humboldt County. I mean, I'm a recovered heroin addict. That's part of my story. There is a lot of people who are in a similar boat, and we've sort of started developing the infrastructure to help people address that issue with there being more treatment centers and stuff in town, and but we still have a lack of mental health care services, which is a major issue for that. And you know, that feeds into homelessness, and it's also related to childhood trauma, which is what makes people addicted. That's a lot to talk about in a short interview, but in terms of, do you have any thoughts on the surface about how we've handled things so far and where you see that in the overall list of your priorities?
Well, I mean, have we handled it so far? Have we really made a big difference? I'm sure there are smaller groups out there.
I'll answer that question.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But yeah, when you do have, so I've run into homeless veterans that are out of their mind, you know, and they're not there. And as soon as they get stable housing, it's like a fog clears, and then they are able to go, hey, you know, I'm worth something. I can do things with my life, and you know, housing is, again, the keystone to addiction treatment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we have more housing, we're not spending as much money on health care, so we can reinvest that health care savings into more programs for people, and it ends up solving itself. It really does. Yeah. But yeah, again, housing is the most important thing. You know, we have people, students that are living with family that can't find affordable housing. We have people that are living on the street that are couch surfing, that don't have any permanent housing. So yeah, it's really important. Yeah. Yeah, again, housing. Yeah. Most important thing in Humboldt County. And I know that there's a group of people out there that don't want to get rid of the small town feel by building even a little bit of housing, but it's gonna end up helping everybody. Yeah, absolutely. Housing is the keystone. Okay.
We've got 2 minutes left, so this has gone by quickly, as it often does. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is that, you know, you mentioned the grand jury, and it sounds like that you really respect the work that they do in terms of holding the Board of Supervisors accountable. Recently, they issued a report about the Child Welfare Services Department and all of the issues there. And unfortunately, from my perspective at least, it seemed like there was a rather glib response. They said, yes, we recognize that these things are problems, but they didn't accept virtually any of the recommendations that were made by the grand jury. And there was a little bit of maybe even some condescension in how they answered that. How would you approach recommendations from the grand jury if you were on the Board of Supervisors? So, you have 1 minute.
Oh, I know. 1 minute. All right. Yes. No rush. No pressure here. So if you look at the 2020 audit that happened, one of the issues was we found what was it? $1.4 million got transferred out of one of the trust funds that we don't know where it went. So man, that is is that our 1 minute warning? Yeah. So yeah, one of the things that we need to do as the county supervisors, one of the things that county supervisors need to do is figure out how to close those trusts and combine them into maybe one more accountable trust that will help us keep track of this money. Because yeah, there's a lot of wasted. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of government waste, and there's a lot of people not getting. Man, for a minute. Sorry.
Okay, we're done. That was well handled. I appreciate your.
Thanks. Yeah, that was.
With the minute left, you did an admirable job, and I think that you shown a good handle of the issues. So
yeah,
thanks for joining us. In other news, Cal Poly Humboldt, formerly Humboldt State University, has over the past year and change been busy expanding its educational and infrastructural presence in the county in order to accommodate an anticipated rise in enrollment. So far, those enrollment figures have come in way under estimates. However, according to a report this week in the North Coast Journal, the university's current draft enrollment numbers show an uptick from last fall of a mere 2%. or 123 students, when the administration had projected 2,000 only 6 months ago. While university leadership is not panicking, the Journal reports that these figures put the campus behind what they'd hoped would be a doubling of the student population by 2028. Worse, the university could see a permanent 5% funding reduction if enrollment doesn't increase by 862 students by next fall. All this while the CSU system as a whole recently approved yet another tuition increase. The CSU Board of Trustees announced this week that it has approved a multi-year tuition hike that will increase costs by 6% per year for 5 years, ostensibly bringing some stability to the university's budget. Under the approved proposal, full-time undergraduate tuition would increase by $342 per student beginning in the 24-25 academic year. The tuition proposal will sunset at the end of the 28-29 school year. Not content to stand pat, however, Cal Poly Humboldt will still expand its programs and services, notably including a first-of-its-kind bachelor's program in communications for inmates at Pelican Bay State Prison. It's the first BA program to be taught in person in a high-security corrections facility in California. It's a partnership between Cal Poly Humboldt, College of the Redwoods, and the California Department of Corrections. Maker's Apron Creative Reuse, Recology Humboldt, Keat TV, and artist Katie Texas held an event last weekend to promote recycling and creativity in Humboldt County. Held at Recology Humboldt's Trash Museum on Vance Avenue in Samoa, the event saw dozens of people gather amid treasures recovered from years of trash collection and disposal in order to build Shreddy Yeti and the Plastic Planet. Under Texas's tutelage, the gathered crowd used recycling materials to build a Yeti out of shredded paper, as well as a model of planet Earth made out of plastic bottle caps and sundry. After feasting on pancakes, the crowd happily went about the work of constructing a crypto hominid. The creature, far from being the nightmarish man-eater that has reportedly plagued the slopes of Everest for thousands of years, wore a big smile and looked like it wanted a hug.
So Maker's Apron and Keat TV are out here at Recology making Shreddy Yeti and the Plastic Planet. That's two big pieces of art made out of recycled or reclaimed materials, because we're doing this series of events to promote the 4 R's of waste reduction. That's reduce, reuse, recycle, rot. And this is our reuse and recycle portion. So we're taking recycled materials or reclaimed materials and making these pieces of art that are going to turn into educational tools we'll take around the county to teach people about waste reduction. I just don't want anything to go to waste, really. I see so much creative potential in just everything. And if we can take something that is otherwise going to go to waste and turn it into art that helps people also not make more waste, that's just right where I want to be.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned and stay informed.